when I got called to Argentina, I thought I thought of like Guatemala, rainforests and tropical stuff, and I got there, and it's kind of like, if you've ever been to the south, I've been in Georgia for a couple days before this, it's kind of similar to the southeastern United States. And so there's the Rosario mission covers 3 different provinces. It covers all of the Santa Fe province, all of Entre Rios, and then part of the just very north tip of the Buenos Aires province. So the Santa Fe and the Buenos Aires province, they're kind of they're super flat. There's not a hill in sight. All of it's very humid and very hot, but it's kind of not deserty, but it's not exactly green, lush vegetation. But then if you go over to Entre Rios, that's more of, if you've ever heard of a gaucho, that's like an Argentine cowboy, that's where they all live. And it's very green, and there's much more lush vegetation. You actually find some hills. It was the most exciting thing ever. And for my last two transfers, I got transferred to Entre Rios because I finally saw a hill again. Hadn't seen a hill in about 2 years, so I was pretty excited about that. But wherever you go, it'll be very, very humid, very hot in the summer. You got to make sure mold kind of gets over everything, so you got to protect your clothes and things from the mold. And that's the weather. It gets pretty cold in the winter, so pack some warm stuff. Doesn't really they've never seen snow, most of them. They're amazed when you tell them about snow, but it gets right to about 33 degrees, and with the humidity, that's pretty cold still, so pack a good winter jacket. And that's all I can think of to say about the weather. As far as the food and the culture go, the food is very good. They don't use a lot of spices. They eat a lot of meat. It's really like Italian food with extra meat and steak mixed. So you eat a ton of Italian food, lots of pasta, spaghetti. When I got back, everything I knew how to cook was pasta and pizza. And then they also eat a lot of steak. They have these big parties they call asados. Pretty much every party they have, it's an asado. If you don't have steak, it's not a party there. And it's just a cut of beef with lots of salt on it, and they just cook it really well. So there's no spices, no barbecue sauce, but they cook it really well, so it's good. And one time I actually brought barbecue sauce and put it on. The members thought I was weird, but it tasted really good. And the food's good. Watch out, you can gain some weight if you're not careful. For them, the best in the US, we kind of shave off the fatty part. We try and get the lean cuts of meat. For them, the fat is the best part. So you can get kind of sick if you eat too much fat. And they like to fry everything too. So one of the best things, if it ever is raining, go to the members' houses, because they will feed you every time it rains. Especially if you're out in the country, they'll give you these. They're kind of like an Indian fry bread. It's called a torta frita, and it's just basically just flour and water, and they fry it up. And it's not very good for you, but every time it rains, they'll give it to you, and it's really good. So remember, when it rains, go to the member's house. About half the mission is big city, and the other half is kind of out there. They say the campo, but it's just like country, middle nowhere cowboys. So I spent about half my mission in the city, and the city, it's kind of, if you know anything about Buenos Aires, it's pretty similar. There's some really poor areas, there's some really rich areas, very crowded. It kind of looks like the streets of Europe, with how if you've ever seen some of those Italian buildings, or it's kind of like that. Have Italian architecture, very busy, crowded cities. But then if you go out in the country, you see guys walking around in the traditional cowboy attire all the time. They'll ride horses around. I actually have horses in the city sometimes too. That's another story. I guess I could tell you about the Vishas, but that's okay. So if you go in the city especially, there's these very poor areas. They're called Vishas, especially in Rosario and in Santa Fe, especially. That's one of the big cities, and so there's a lot of poverty there. They're people that they don't own the land. They're squatters. They just came and built their houses on there, and they've lived there for generations. And they're kind of poor. Those places can be kind of dangerous sometimes, but you can find some really good people there too. But that was kind of astonishing for me the first time I went to Avisha, because it's just giant neighborhoods, and their houses are kind of just built out of scrap metal and wood, whatever they find lying around. But they're good people, a lot of them. You just kind of got to be careful too, because there's some shifty people too. There was a couple times where I was sure I was going to get robbed, but I think the Lord was protecting me, so I didn't. Actually, one time I almost got shot, but they missed, barely.